And yet, even to use these words like reality or truth or the divine can in itself be misleading, because in using these words, the mind thinks that truth is a thing. There's this thing called truth as opposed to everything else. That there's this thing called divinity as opposed to something else. That there's this thing called enlightenment in contrast to this other thing called unenlightenment. These notions are very misleading, because if enlightenment shows us anything, enlightenment is realizing our own identity as the one and the all. That there is only one. Whatever you want to name that one. There is only Spirit, there is only Brahman, there is only Buddha nature, there is only the one, there is only the divine. There is only the one. And only, of course, means only. And if there's only the one, then where are you going to point to it and say this is it as opposed to something else? If there's only the one, well, there's no reason to point in any given direction anymore, is there? As soon as you understand there's only the one, the jig is up, the whole thing's over, the whole ridiculous notion of duality collapses. Because if there's only the one, there's certainly nowhere to go to look to find it. Because if there's only the one, even the looking for it is the one. The losing it is the one. The finding it is the one. The confusion is the one. The clarity is the one. Right? Life and birth and death and everything in between is the one. Paying taxes is the one. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the one. So is eating Cheetos in front of the TV. Do you see how the mind, though, is so attached to division? It says, well, what is the truth? And, of course, then begins the distortion, the confusion, the misunderstanding. Trying to solve the non-existent problem. Because all forms of suffering, when they're boiled down into their most essential form, they all come from this simple misperception. The misperception. Missing the perception that the only thing there is the one. Everything is the one. To realize everything is one is nirvana. In the Zen teachings, they say nirvana and samsara are the same, but only identically the same. I didn't understand that until the one woke up. And then it was, oh, of course they're the same, because there's only one thing. Just like on one side of the coin is nirvana, the other side is samsara. But either side, it's the same thing. Quite a fat lot of good it does you or me if we don't realize that. Right? If it's just a simple belief that we walk around with, it doesn't solve anything, because we're still actually in a divided state of mind. So it can't be limited to a simple belief. But since everything is one already, since everything is the one, and any other notion of anything else is an illusion. So imagine that, any notion of yourself as anything at all other than the one reality is a mistaken identity, is a total illusion, is a fabrication with no existence. Imagine that. So it all comes down to a case of mistaken identity. Thinking that we are something other than the one. And of course, the only thing that can convince you that you're other than the one is thinking. It's the only thing that can fool mind into believing it's other than the one. But remember, from the perception of the one, it's all okay, because no matter how much that you think yourself into delusion, you can't think yourself out of reality. You can only imagine yourself out of reality. You know what I mean? It's like you can sit in the chair where you're sitting, and you can think about being anywhere you want to think about. You can imagine it. You can fantasize about it as much as you want. But the one thing you can't achieve is actually not being here. It can seem as if you achieve not being here. You can fantasize so unimaginably well, it can actually seem that you pull it off. For moments, you may think that you're, in south of France or something, or unenlightened. But the one thing you can never achieve is not actually being wherever you are, namely here and now. The worst that you can do is imagine something other than truth. But since there can't be something other than truth, and you can't be somewhere other than truth, that's why as soon as you try to define truth in your mind, you will always go astray. Anybody that ever tries to define truth is a fool. It's a fool's game. It's a losing game. Even the game I do, this teaching thing, this is a losing game. Right? It's the only thing you can do that you're guaranteed you're going to fail at every time you do it. Talk about the truth. What could be more idiotic? What could be more prone to absolute failure? But at least it's guaranteed, so you don't have to worry about succeeding or not. I'm just in the business of failing well. I don't have to worry about succeeding or crossing the finish line first or doing something better than somebody else. If you know the highest you can ever achieve is total failure, then the bar is pretty low. And yet, as the great Taoist Lao Tzu said, failure is the means to success. It's another one of those phrases I love. Failure is the means to success. Because only when we have failed at all our attempts to be other than truth do we stop. Totally stop. Completely stop. Stop trying and stop not trying. Just stopping. Without even knowing how to stop. This is what the old Taoists meant by failure. It brings us to a stopping point. And in that stopping point, we are listening for the very first time. We are finally not asserting or denying anything. We are not striving to understand or not understand. There's a place of total stopping, therefore total listening, total availability. And in that total availability, you come out of the trance. You don't have to worry about pulling yourself out of a trance. You come out. And yet, even to use these words like reality or truth or the divine,